when we multiplied, let's say 5x times 3x squared minus 2x plus 6. So when we have that problem, we multiply it out by taking everything over here and multiplying it everything inside. So now that it's going to have a common term. So when we multiply these, we get 15x to the 1 and 2 make 3, minus 5 times 2 is 10. X, here's a 1 and a 1 makes 2, plus 30. There's 1, there's none, there's 1. Okay, so what we're going to be working on today is doing this in reverse. Okay, now we're going to go reverse, and we would look at a polynomial. In this case, it's a trinomial. And we'd ask ourselves, what numbers or letters do they all have in common? Okay, we go, oh yeah, 15, 10, and 30, they all have a 5 in common. Okay, x cubed, x squared, x, they all have an x in common, and I'm going to pull it out. Okay, but I'm not going to use that same one. I'm going to use a different one. Okay, so let's do an example. 25 y to the 4 minus 10 y squared plus 15 y. So here's what we're looking for. Look for numbers in common and variables. So for this, I'm going to go, okay, so what number that goes into 25, 10, and 15? Put it in the chat box. What would that be? Okay, good. Nice. Okay, good. Okay, so 5 goes into all of those. And then we look at our variables. I've got y to the 4, y to the 2, and y to the 1. You take the smallest amount that's in all of them. So in this case, the smallest amount would be 1, because 4, 2, and 1, the smallest one is 1. Okay, and then we ask ourselves, if I divide each of these terms by 5y, what's left? And that's what's going to go inside my parentheses. So I don't think we talked about subtracting exponents, but let's just think about it this way. When we cancel 4 and 1, there's going to be 3 left over. So we're subtracting exponents when we divide. Okay, so this is going to give us 25 divided by 5 is 5. Y to the 4 minus 1 is 3. Minus 10 divided by 5 is 2. 2 minus 1 is y to the 1. Plus 15 divided by 5 is 3. And 1 take away 1 is 0. And you're done. Okay, so hopefully that's not too confusing. Let's do a couple more. This is the first rule of factoring. First rule of factoring, especially when they say factor completely, it's a hint that there might be more than one way to factor, is GCF. That's what we're doing. We're looking for the greatest common factor. Okay. Look for common terms. Okay. That's huge. First rule of factoring. And you may see that on a quiz, because I usually beat that to death. Okay, let's try another one. Actually, I'm going to take off that last term. We'll deal with things like that later. Yeah, let's just make it like that. Please enough. Okay, so what's the common number? What number goes into 12, 24, and 6? What's the biggest common number? Okay, Nathan's got it. Andrew, Sylvester, Emma, Jackie, good. Okay, so far everybody in the chat box. See, Nathan, there's one bigger. That is one, but there's a bigger one. Okay, and even make sure your chat box is going to me, please. Okay, so good. Yeah, that is it. Awesome. Okay, so let's look at it. The biggest number is 6. Yes, 2 goes in all of those, 3 goes in all of those, but 6 also goes into all of those. So 6 is my biggest number. Then comparing my x's, which one's smallest? 6, 5, or 3? Okay, that's not hard. X to the 3 is the smallest. And then my y's, I have 5, 4, or 2. So I'm going to take out y to the 2. Okay, let me give you a minute to write down. That's kind of hard to put in the chat box. So I'm just going to have you write it down and then we'll look at it. You remember the exponents pretty well?
Yeah, pretty much.
So if you're not used to doing it in your head yet, you can think of it as 6x cubed y squared. I do not want you to have to do this. This is only so you can see what I'm doing mentally. 6x to the 3 y squared and 6x to the 3 y squared. Okay, so mentally I would say 12 divided by 6 is 2. And then 6 subtract 3 is 3. Okay, and then my y's, 2 subtract 2 is 3. And then a positive 24 divided by 6 is a 4. And then I'm looking at my x's again. 5 take away 3 is 2. And 4 take away 2 is 2. The other thing we can think of is I have 3 of them out here. How many more do I need to make 5? My y's, I have 2 here. How many more do I need to make 4? So it's kind of like that also. Okay, and then I do 6, negative 6 divided by 6 is a negative 1. And then 3 subtract 3 is 0 x's. And then my y, 2 subtract 2 is 0. And that would be my final answer. It's very tempting to forget this. This is very important because it's what I call a placeholder. If you have 3 terms here, you better have 3 terms inside. Okay, even if it's a 1. If there's a minus here, that means there was a number. Okay, minus or a plus. Questions on that? What questions might you have? How many of you remember doing this before? Put yes or no in the chat box. Or any variations. Oh, okay. Okay, there's a lot of no's. Wow. Okay, so I know there's a lot of no's, but does it seem hard? Those that you said no, does it seem hard? Okay, good. Good, I'm glad. Most of you are saying it seems fine, not too hard. I mean, math can be hard sometimes, but hopefully you have somebody that'll explain it well enough for you, you know? Okay, awesome. So that's my first rule of factoring. Look for a common term. What I'm doing today is pretty much giving you like notes for the next two assignments so that if you want to go ahead and work on those, you can. Okay. Second, there's like 4/5 ways to factor. Ways to factor. Okay. The first one was the GCF that we just looked at. Okay. So we did that one. Check. Second way is difference of two squares. It's actually two perfect squares, but squares are squares. Now we're gonna look at that one. Anybody still writing? Okay. So remember multiplying these. This was like one of the last things we did last week. I think it was. Okay, multiplying these. When I multiply these out and I distribute 4x to 4x, I get 16x squared. 4x to 3, I get a plus 12x. And then when I multiply my negative 3 to 4x, I get a, oops, that was a plus. You guys gotta keep me right on that. Minus 12x. And then a minus 3 times a plus 3 is a minus 9. And what did we say is going to always happen with the middle terms? Good.
Cancel out.
Yep. Thank you. And a couple people put that in the chat box too. Thank you. They will always cancel. So I'm left with 16x squared minus 9. Okay. So some of us need to have our memories refreshed about what is a perfect square. Perfect square would be like 1 squared equals 1. I'm only going to list a few here. Okay, so 2 squared equals 4. 3 squared equals 9. 4 squared equals 16. 5 squared equals 25. So 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, those are all going to be our perfect squares. 6 squared would be 36. Let's go to 10. 8, 9, 10. So then we have 49. We have 64. We have 81. We have 100. And you'd go 121, 141, 169, 196. Up to 15 is pretty common, okay? And then 15 is 225. But let's look at our x's. Okay, if I square an x, I get x squared. So we're going to be looking at what do I have to square in order to get an x squared? So x to the squared gives me x to the 4. X to the third squared is going to give me x to the 6th. And here's the pattern that I want you to see. Any even exponent is a perfect square, because all you have to do is divide them by 2 to figure out what you had. 4 divided by 2 is x squared. 6 divided by 2 is x to the third. So this is what you know that you squared in order to get it. Okay. So let's go back to this. So now factoring. Let's do 25x squared minus 81. This is automatic double parentheses. Okay, because 25 is a perfect square, x squared is a perfect squared, and 81 is a perfect square. And it has to be a minus. Difference means minus. It has to be a minus or it won't work. Of squares. Okay, so automatic double parentheses. What do I have to square to get 25x squared? Put it in the chat box. What do I have to square to get 25x squared? Okay. 5 what? Good. Good. 5x. Awesome. So I have 5x here and 5x there. Okay, what do I have to square to get an 81? Okay, good. A lot of response there. A 9 and a 9. What are the two signs that'll multiply together to give me a minus? What two signs multiply together to give me a minus? Good. Nice. Who else? Which two signs multiply together to give me a minus? Good. Nice. Yep. I have a positive and a negative, or a negative and a positive, and you're done. Done. That was it. Let's try another one. 49. We'll keep it simple. Okay. Minus 100 y squared. Okay. So what, okay, automatic double parentheses, perfect square, perfect square, perfect square, perfect square, and there's a minus. Okay. So write down in the chat box one of your parentheses. Okay. Square root of this and square root of that. So what do you have to square? And what do you have to square? Good. And Esther, you're close. Look at that last one. Nice. Okay. So people are getting it. Awesome. Okay. So square root of 49x squared would be 7x. So 7x and 7x. And then the square root of 100y squared would be 10y. Because 10 times 10 is 100. And then we have a plus and a minus, or a minus and a plus, either way, and you're done. Okay, so there's that one. That's number 2. Okay, difference of squares is factoring number 2. Anybody still writing? Or you can snap a picture. This is one reason that when I multiply these two up here, just like I would multiply these two and get that, I don't need to do the 2 middle terms. Okay, I'm doing it just so you can see the process. But as you get more comfortable with the concept and algebra, you don't actually need to multiply those 2 middle ones, because you already know that you know that you know the 2 middle terms are going to cancel. So why multiply them? Okay. Okay, so that's number 2. Number 3 is what we're going to spend a lot of time on today. Maybe not a lot, but most of our time. So number 3 is what I call a basic trinomial. A basic trinomial. Let me show you what I mean by that. Okay, so x squared plus 13x plus 30. Basic trinomial where the coefficient in front of your x squared is 1. Your first coefficient equals 1. I have a trinomial. I look for common terms. There's nothing there. This one doesn't have an x. That one doesn't have a number. Okay, so no common terms. It's not a difference of squares, but it is a basic trinomial. So first thing, double parentheses. Okay. So then second thing, what do I need to multiply to itself to get x squared? Put in the chat box. What I need to multiply times itself to get x squared. Good. Good, a lot of answers. Good, it's x. So we're gonna multiply x times x. So that I know that when I multiply out these two parentheses, I'm gonna have to have an x times an x to get an x squared. Okay. Now remember, this last term is a product of when I multiply this number and this number in the back. So I need the 2 factors of a positive 30 that I'll multiply together to give me 30 and add, because it's a plus, to give me 13. So I have 1 times 30, 2 times 15, 3 times 10, or 5 times 6. Which one's going to add together to give me 13? Good. Good. Nice. Okay. Yep, this one. See? I'm going to have you put the bigger number in the first parenthesis. Okay. I have a reason for that, and I'll tell you that in a few minutes. But right now, it's not wrong if you switch them, but I'm going to show you why in a minute. Okay, so I'm going to have 10 and 3. So if this is a positive, I've either got 2 pluses or 2 minuses, because those are the only things that will multiply together to give me a positive. And this one determines which one. So I'm going to have you bring down this sign and then go positive times a positive is a positive. And bringing down that sign, positive times positive is a positive. And that's it. And when we multiply this out again, this is where you would be told to check your work. I would go x times x is x squared. X times 3 is a plus 3x. 10 times x is a plus 10x. And 10 times 3 is a plus 30. And so that when I multiplied or added my terms in the middle together, I'd get 13x plus 30, you're done. So this is checking our work. I'm not requiring that of you guys. They may have done that in middle school if you got that far. I'm not requiring that. However, I would encourage you to do a mental check. Okay, 10 times 3 is 30, and 10 plus 3 is 13. You're done. Okay, that would be your final answer. Okay, let's try a couple more. X squared minus 12x plus 32. Okay, so same idea. No common term, not a difference of squares, basic trinomial, my coefficient's 1, double parentheses. Okay, we know that this is going to be an x times x, so the first spots are x's. If you see what multiplies to give you 32 and adds together to give you 12, put it in the chat box. But in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and multiply it out. If you don't see right away, like in the first 5 seconds, what multiplies together to give you that, then you need to just do a factor list. This is what I call a factor list. But be very careful when you do a factor list because it's so easy to forget a factor unless you do it in numerical order. That's why I start with 1 times 32. And I know that 2 goes in there 16 times. 3 doesn't go into there. 4 goes into there 8 times. 5, no. 6, no. 7, 8. 8 goes in there, but that's that one. And then it goes back up again. So we just found our answer. 4 plus 8 is 12. And some of you had that in there. Okay. So I've got positive, an 8 times 4 to give me 12. 8 times 4 to give me 32. I think I just said that wrong, but okay. Now here's where I said, if you put the bigger number first, you can bring down this sign. We already know that it has to be the same sign, but negative times what gives you a positive. So negative times a negative gives you a positive, and you're done. If you will make this first parenthesis the biggest one, always when you do a basic trinomial, then you can do that. Okay, I'm going to put bigger number, just so to remind you that that's going to be the bigger one. Questions on that one? Usually takes about 10 to start to get the hang of this, but we probably won't do 10. Let's do x squared minus 4x minus 21. No common terms, not a difference of squares, coefficients 1, automatic parentheses, double parentheses. Okay. This is an x squared, so we go x times x. Notice that whatever this term is what ends up in the middle. Okay, I'll explain that later. Okay, so put in the chat box what times what is going to give me 21, but this time subtract to give me 4. What times what? We'll multiply together to give me 21. Multiply to equal 21 and subtract to equal 4. Put it in the chat box. Good. Nice. Yeah, there's a lot of them that just, they are what they are. Okay. So yeah, it's 7 and 3. So 7 times 3 equals 21 and 7 minus 3 equals 4. Remember, bigger number goes here. So 7 and 3. I'm going to have you bring down this front sign. And then negative times what gives me a negative? Put it in the chat box. Negative times what gives me a negative? Good. Nice. Okay, good. Yep, negative times a positive gives me negative. Now, watch what happens here. So a negative 7 times positive 3 equals a negative 21. And a negative 7 plus 3 equals a negative 4. That's how you check your work. That's why if you always put the bigger number first and you bring down that sign and you do this, it always works. And honestly, my daughter's 8th grade math teacher taught her that, and I've adopted it because my students were so freaked out by all the signs. Like, well, which one goes where? And they were making so many mistakes. But when I started introducing it this way, the mistakes were cut down by like 75%. Okay. Let's do one more. And then I'll have you guys do a couple. So x squared minus 4x minus 45. No common term, not a difference of squares. Okay. So I need it to multiply to give you 45 and subtract to give you 4. So put the two numbers in the chat box. Put the two numbers in the chat box. Good. Good. Nice. Okay. And some of you know the signs already, and that's totally awesome because you know that the bigger number has to be the negative, okay, to get the negative 4. Okay, awesome. Good. Okay, so 9 and 5. So we're going to go x and x, 9 and 5. I'm going to bring down this front number because the bigger sign wins. You know that whole subtract the two numbers and the bigger sign wins. Okay, and then a negative times a positive gives me negative. And you're done. That was it. So we know that negative 9 times positive 5 equals negative 45. This is kind of my check right here. But I do it in my head. And then a negative 9 plus 5 equals the negative 4. So we know we're good. Okay. I'm going to have you do 2. Let's see how you do. Oh, this is a tricky one. Okay, so there's 1. Okay. So put that answer in the chat box. And if I wrote too fast, I apologize. Make sure you take a picture so you can get caught up. Good. Now that you've got the numbers, go ahead and put them in the parentheses and write it in the chat box. You don't need to put the parentheses. You can just put a couple spaces in between if you don't want to write the parentheses. I'm good with that. I'll post the notes. It might not be right away. I did that yesterday though, so you could do the quiz. So with these notes, you have enough knowledge to do both assignment 41 and 42. It's just factoring. And I know there's not a lot of work to show. Okay, I get it. But the more practice that you actually do for yourself, the better it'll be for you. One of the biggest, I don't know if I want to call it a complaint, but the biggest observation for from the Algebra 2 teachers is that students don't know how to factor when they get there. But I don't know if it's that they didn't know how or if they had been out of practice, but I do this every year, this factor review for my students, because a lot of what you do in Algebra 2, I'd say probably a good quarter revolves around factoring. Okay. Okay. So most of you have the answers. That's awesome. Okay. So we have 12 times 3. Sometimes we forget about that 12. We want to go 9 times 4. We want to go 6 times 6. Okay. And we forget about that 12 times 3. So we have x and x, 12 and 3. We bring down the minus, and a minus times a minus makes a plus, and you're done. So that's how easy it can be when you have the right numbers. If you don't have the right numbers, that's why it's really important to check those. And then the last one, oh yeah, let's do one of those. X squared minus x minus 30. What's really important here is to remember, what is that number in front of x that you don't see? Anyone? Good. Okay. A lot of people put it in the chat box, but just to say it out loud, it's a 1. In this case, it's a -1. Okay. So go ahead and do this problem. And put your answer in the chat box. Okay. Andrew's got it. So if you were absent yesterday, be sure to check the module for this week, because I have the notes posted from yesterday, and what it was the review for the quiz, the first quiz for the week. Okay. What I'm going to do is, I was actually going to give you, it's only 10 questions. Okay. My quizzes tend to be pretty short. Awesome. Most of you have got that. Emma, check your signs. Okay. Remember, bring down that front sign. So what I'm going to do is, I was going to give you a second quiz on the graphing and stuff, but I think Monday we'll do a review on that before I post the quiz, and we'll just do it that way. Okay, good, nice. Okay, so most of you discovered that it was 6 times 5. Okay, and then 6 minus 5 is 1. So x and x, bring down that middle sign. We have 6 and 5, and negative times positive gives you negative, and you're done. Here's another one that's a common scenario, and that would be x squared plus 5x plus 4. So we covered the 3 ways of factoring today. The other 2 ways is when the coefficient is not 1 and factor by grouping. I'm not sure how much factor, I mean, we probably won't get to the factor by grouping, but we will definitely do the when the coefficient's not 1, because some teachers don't teach it the way I do, and they do that whole guess and check thing, which is outdated and so wrong. It's just like torture. So we want 2 numbers that'll multiply to give you 4 and add together to give you 5. Good, nice. Okay. So we already know it's going to be x and x. Think about it this way. When your middle number is either 1 more or 1 less than this last number, you're going to be using that number times 1. Okay, let me say that again. If your middle number is 1 more or 1 less, like if you're adding it or subtracting it, then this last number, you're going to be using that number and 1. So 4 times 1. Okay, so bring down my middle sign, and I've got a 4, a 1, plus times plus gives you plus, and you're done. Okay. Okay, so what I'm going to do right now, first of all, I'm going to pause this.